this mountain. I'm afraid, therefore, there will be people killed on it in the future.
The mountain. There is a mountain that demands silence. Its face rises like a frozen wall above the clouds. They call it the Eiger North Face, but climbers gave it another name, the Murder Wall. In 1936, 4 young men tried to conquer it. What they found was not glory, but tragedy. You might know this story from the film Nordwand. But behind the movie lies a real event that shook the world of mountaineering. This is the true story of the men who faced the mountain. A wall of ice, almost 2,000 meters high. Temperatures far below freezing. No sun for most of the day. The Eiger North Face in Switzerland became one of the last great challenges of the 1930s. Back then, mountain climbing was more than a sport. In Nazi Germany and Austria, it was a matter of national pride. The first team to reach the top of the Eiger North Face would bring honor to their country. But for 2 young climbers, Toni Kurz and Andreas Hinterstoisser, it was not about fame. It was about friendship, freedom, and the need to go further than anyone had before.
That whole business with frozen ropes, 4 people setting up anchors, desperation to get this injured man down, and at some point during all that confusion.
The beginning. In July 1936, Toni Kurz and Andreas Hinterstoisser arrived in the village of Grindelwald. They were both experienced mountaineers, strong and confident. At the same time, 2 Austrians, Eddie Rayner and Willy Andrewer, were also preparing to climb. The Eiger was waiting. A cold shadow over the valley. The 4 men began their climb early in the morning on July 21st. At first, everything went well. They moved smoothly across the lower ice fields, cutting steps, driving their ice axes into the wall. They joked and helped one another. It felt like the beginning of something legendary. The movie shows this part with light and warmth, and it is close to what really happened. But on the Eiger, weather changes faster than thought. By afternoon, the wind grew stronger. Snow began to fall. The visibility dropped. The mountain strikes back. A rock the size of a fist struck Willy Andrewer on the head. He survived, but his skull was fractured. Blood ran down his face and froze in the cold. From that moment, the climb was over. The only goal was to get back down alive. In Nordwand, this moment is full of tension and quiet fear. In real life, it was chaos. The wind roared so loud that the men could barely hear each other's voices. They began to retreat the same way they came, but one section of the route was now impossible. The famous Hinterstoisser Traverse, a smooth section of ice that Andreas had crossed using a brilliant rope technique. On the way up, it worked perfectly. On the way down, the rope had been removed. Now there was no way back. A storm rolled in from the west. Snow and ice swept across the wall. Temperatures fell below -20 degrees Celsius. The men were trapped halfway up the face. Trapped. They tried to find shelter in a small niche of rock. For a whole night they held on, covered in ice, unable to move. Andreas Hinterstoisser tried to climb out again but slipped and fell into the storm. His body was never recovered. Willy Andrewer, already injured, died a few hours later. Eddie Rayner and Toni Kurz were now the only ones left. They tied themselves together to survive the night. In the movie, the sound of the storm almost drowns everything. In real life, that silence between the gusts was worse than the noise. They could hear the wind, the cracking of ice, and nothing else. By morning, rescuers appeared below the wall. Local guides and soldiers tried to reach the men from the valley. They shouted up to them through the storm. Toni Kurz was still alive. He shouted back that Eddie Rayner was dead, frozen to the rope. He himself was stuck, tangled, and hanging about 50 meters above the rescuers. The last hours.
And there were bodies hurtling through the air, there were ropes whipping through the air, and it ended up with 3 men dead and 1 man, Toni Kurz, still alive.
For hours, they tried to throw ropes up to him. He caught one, tied it, and began lowering himself. But each knot, each frozen rope, took endless effort to undo. He bit the cords with his teeth, using what little strength remained. Nordwand recreates this scene almost exactly as it happened. The filmmakers used the original rescue transcripts for accuracy. For 5 long hours, Toni fought his way down. The rescuers could see him clearly now. Only a few meters separated them. But then the rope ended. There was not enough length to reach him. Exhausted, frozen, and unable to move, he said quietly, "I cannot go on." Those were his last words. When the rescuers reached him the next day, he was dead, still hanging from the wall, his hand frozen to the rope. The legacy. News of the tragedy spread across Europe. The Eiger North Face became known as the Death Wall. It took 2 more years before another team succeeded in reaching the top. But the names Toni Kurz and Andreas Hinterstoiser became legends. Their courage inspired generations of climbers, and their failure showed the true power of nature. The film Nordwand honors that history with impressive realism. Almost every major event in the movie happened in real life. Only a few creative choices were added, like the character of Luis, a reporter who symbolizes the outside world watching from below. There was no Louise in real life, but there were journalists waiting at the foot of the mountain. Actor Benno Fuhrman, who played Toni Kurz, once said in an interview, "When you stand on that wall, you realize it is not about climbing anymore. It is about facing death and still going higher." That is exactly what this story is about. After the tragedy, the Eiger North Face became a test of human spirit. Many climbers tried, many failed. Some disappeared forever in its frozen cracks. But every attempt was made in the memory of those 4 men who faced it first. Today, their names are carved into memorials at the foot of the Eiger. Visitors still look up at the wall, tracing the route they took, and imagining what it must have felt like to be there. Nordwand ends with silence. No victory. No summit. Just the wind over the ice and the memory of those who never came back. The movie captures the truth perfectly, because this is not just a story of death. It is a story of courage, friendship, and the unstoppable human desire to reach beyond fear. This was based on real.